Okay, good morning or good afternoon, everyone. So this is an introduction to the jewellery project. It's a very straightforward project. What we're going to do is we are going to take some wooden veneers, a little bit like these, or like this, and we're going to turn them into a wooden ring that you can take home. Now, you might be wondering, why don't we take a piece of wood, drill a hole in it, a little bit like that, cut it around and kind of deal with that. So the reason for that is that it's actually particularly weak when you do that. It will break very, very quickly. So just to give you a little bit of the science behind what is going on here. So in a normal piece of wood, we have, if we have a little plank here, we have typically a wood grain that goes along here. Now this wood grain is what gives us the strength of our wood. Okay, and this is determined by what's called the lignin. Okay, that's the type of cells that basically hold this wood grain together. If we were to drill a hole into a piece of wood and create a ring like that, we would end up with very short pieces of lignin. So the grain here is going to be too short. So essentially what we're going to do instead is we're going to take one long piece of very thin material and we're going to basically spiral it around so that it is going to have that, and essentially the lignin will follow along in the grain inside there. Okay, so because then it has a long grain, it will be stronger. Okay, so that's kind of what we're doing. Okay, I'll talk you through that now. So I suppose the first thing that you'll need to do is just kind of find a cylindrical object that will fit your fingers. Okay, so like this marker, for example, might fit, or you might have to go looking around. Perhaps like a piece of tube that you might be able to find. Have a look around, get a little bit creative, but essentially you want something that will fit your finger. So if I take my ring there, you can see that's going to be a pretty good fit. Maybe not perfect, but we'll see. Okay, so I'm going to take that, and the diameter of this is 20 millimeters. So we have to have a little bit of a think about this in terms of our mathematics. Okay, we're going to need to cut out from a piece of material a little bit like this. So we need to know how long this needs to be. So I've said that this is going to be a diameter 20. So we're going to need to use the circumference equation, which is 2 pi r, or we can also just have pi times your diameter 20. Okay, in my case 20. For you, if you've got a smaller hand, smaller fingers, it might be 15, 17, 16. If you've got bigger hands, you might need more than that. So if I just multiply those two together pretty quickly, okay, pi times 20, which gives me 62. let's round it up to 63. Now, that's for one loop of my material. I'm probably going to want probably around 3 loops. Okay, so we're going to make this 189, but I'm just going to round that up to 190. Okay, so a little bit of maths, that's kind of the only math that you'll have to worry about, so don't worry too much. Now, you should have, at this point, some veneers that have been passed along to you. You know, I've got a couple of different ones. The ones that you have might be slightly different to the ones that I have here, but you know, you'll have a little bit of a look here. So you can see here there's this very nice kind of red kind of cherry color, cherry wood, oak, and mahogany. Okay, so these 3 timbers, I do have more here. Okay, but you're going to want to kind of work within these. Now, you might have like a nice clean cut edge, or you might have bits that are slightly broken and damaged. Whatever, we can work with all of that. So using my ruler here, and if you want you can use multiple ones and you can make 2 or 3 rings. Like if I show you my example from a few minutes ago, my example there had 3 different types of timber. Here it is. You know, so I did have this was teak, this dark one, oak, and I think mahogany in there again. So you know, we can overlay these as well if we so wish, or if you want to have one solid color, that's no problem as well. Okay, so I'm going to mark out the distance that I want. So I said 190 millimeters, and I'm going to do this kind of along the grain as best I can. Okay, so 190 millimeters, and I'm not going to work directly in the middle of the wood. So if I cut out a section here in the middle, for example, then that makes it less likely for someone else to be able to use these other parts. So I'm going to take this, just arrange this here a little bit. Okay, take your time getting this set up, because if you do this right, it makes everything so much easier. Okay, so 190 millimeters. Do this with a pencil, please. Okay, a pen will actually allow the ink would seep into the wood grain, which we don't want. Now I'm going to make this a bit bigger than what I need. So, you know, this is about 1 centimeter wide. I'm going to make it about 15 millimeters wide, for the simple fact that we can make it bigger, or sorry, we can make it smaller later. We can't really make it bigger. So, you know, if I want to make it smaller, I can sand it down. If you want to make like a very thin one, you can do that without too much difficulty. Okay, so hopefully you can see that set of lines. Okay, you can do this multiple times. I'm going to do it just once because I don't want to bore you to death, basically. I've got here my Stanley knife. Okay, it is sharp. They're not particularly clean, so just be careful when you're using this. Obviously you've got the sharp edge on one end, and then you've got like the blunt edge. I've seen students being very silly before and trying to cut that way. Don't do that. Cut, you know, just kind of have a look at it before you start cutting. These rulers as well. Okay, I'm going to try and cut as much as possible across my body. Okay, if I cut this way, there is a slight chance that this could come back and hit my body. So if I'm cutting away from the body, that is better. So I've got that there. Now what you'll find is that the knife will try to cut along the grain. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit about what all that means in a second, but you just have to be a little bit careful that it doesn't accidentally go off pieced. Okay, so I've got my materials here, I've cut this down. Ooh. So you can see there that just kind of wanted to tear. If that happens, not the end of the world. Okay, just don't do it on purpose. And I'm going to do the same here. Okay, when I'm not using the knife, I have the blade retracted. So give this another cut. Okay, resist the temptation to try and break it with your hands or anything like that. Use the knife, you'll get a much neater cut. Okay, so with this, if I just take some of this here, you'll notice that the grain is kind of stronger along the grain. So as in, like, it doesn't bend, or it bends, but it doesn't break along that grain. It's quite easy to bend it. Going this direction, however, because the lignin that we talked about there earlier goes along that grain, it's quite easy to split along the lignin. Okay, now this is not as easy to bend as, like, it's not perfectly easy to bend. It will still start to crack and break. So we do need to soften up that lignin a little bit. We're not quite there yet, but that'll be kind of the next stage. So I've got my material here, and just on the edges here, I'm going to take some sandpaper, and I'm going to just sand down one edge. Okay. So we want it to be pretty thin on that side, and then I'm going to flip it over and do it on this side. So they should nearly be like opposites. Okay. Now if it tries to crack on you, that's not necessarily a problem. Just kind of keep an eye on it. Just be gentle. Ooh. Okay, just be gentle. Okay, so by having that there, what that allows us to do is we've got, if I draw this kind of big, the grain will come around, and like, that's kind of the first layer, and you can see there then that doesn't actually, like, it's a gentle turn, and then it kind of feeds in nicely there, so it doesn't have like this kind of broken edge like that as it finishes. It's nice and smooth already. Okay, so that's kind of the first section. Cut up your materials as you see fit, and then the next video will show you how to soften that up to the point where we are able to use it.